Well, she's a no-brainer. She has stunning beauty. She writes all her own songs. She's really the most gifted young female talent around. And so, yeah, it's you just see her and you know that she's an all-timer.
Yeah.
But people in the music industry really don't like Clive Davis, most of them. And his criminality is kind of amazing.
Clive Davis is dead, and the only thing people are sad about is that Whitney Houston didn't get to see him take his seat in hell. That sounds harsh, but after listening to what Alicia Keys has to say, anyone who thinks it's wild people feel that way should be lucky that they never got to experience what Clive Davis was, and how quick he was to turn on his biggest artist, Whitney Houston, when she wasn't ready to play by his rulebook anymore.
Shame, shame, shame. Shame on you. Yeah, because, I know.
Clive Davis died a few days ago, comfy and cozy in his home with $850 million in his account. And everyone is celebrating because it's about time. The thing is, Clive Davis was what you'd call a walking contradiction. He had an eye and ear for talent, and it's true that he introduced the world to some of the best artists ever. On the other hand, he's been a very dark figure in the music industry since the 70s. Almost every penny from the $850 million he got was built off the back of artists who never lived past 50, and he's been accused of everything from mishandling his artists' finances to orchestrating their deaths. So yeah, people are not jumping out of their seats to celebrate him, but that hasn't stopped celebs from coming out with tributes, talking about how incredible he is, and his run as one of the gatekeepers of the music industry. Some still tried to lick his boots and prove that they were still loyal to him and what he built. I mean, why else would Oprah Winfrey come out to talk about how Whitney Houston relapsed and fell off the stage, and Oprah begged those in attendance not to tell anyone?
First interview I did with her when we'd gone behind stage and I asked her about her attention, she was clean. But the day she came to my show then to perform in front of the audience, she was not. And she fell off of the stage. And so even though the audience was there and the audience had cameras, I begged them not to put those pictures out because it would ruin her life, and they did not.
Girl, the only time we should really hear Oprah talking is when she's telling us what happened to those missing girls at her school in South Africa. Because if there's one person who has secrets as big as Clive, it's Oprah. Alicia Keys also gave a tribute to Clive Davis, saying, "He believed in me from the very beginning, when I was just 18 years old and very few saw what I was capable of. He has stood beside me through every chapter that followed, not just in that fake industry way, but in a way that was full of love for how unlimited I could be. His impact reaches far beyond music. It lives in the countless artists he championed, the dreams he helped bring to life, and the love he poured into so many." Alicia Keys was one of those whose careers definitely got a good start under Clive Davis. When he found Alicia, he didn't just sign her, he built her from the ground up and controlled everything from her first release to her styling and branding. Clive poured a lot of resources into Alicia's success, and her career has been managed like a strict political campaign. No surprises, no scandals, just good songs and a media-friendly image. And that control extended beyond her music. We've never seen Alicia speak on industry politics or get into a beef with anybody. For years now, she's stayed quiet about public accusations, including the rumors about her marriage to Swiss Beats. Clive trained her to be unproblematic, and she became an artist who never really challenged anything, especially since the system worked in her favor. So while being tied to Clive Davis paid off for her, Alicia couldn't help think about how she was just one of the lucky few who got to be around him, have a respectable career, and still come out alive. Because a lot of artists can't say the same thing, especially when they start looking for their own independence. Cat Williams already said that when major artists like Whitney Houston die, best believe someone behind the scenes is profiting from it.
In business, nothing is coincidental, or you would be hearing who's losing money. In all of these situations, it's only the artist that's losing. Somebody makes big money. When these rappers get killed, not incidental. Somebody made $100 million and now don't have to talk to that artist or none of their crew, don't have to validate none of their contracts. Now only got to deal with the mama, only got to see her once a year.
Speaking of money, Clive Davis was one of the people who benefited a lot financially from Whitney Houston's death. And according to a blind item, what he did to Whitney was a play-by-play of what he did to another artist called Janice Joplin in the 70s. The one big thing that will be revealed after the music legend's death is how much he contributed to the death of the permanent A-list singer. It's the same playbook he followed decades earlier with the illiterate singer and her death. This blind item was talking about Janice Joplin, who was one of Clive's biggest artists before Whitney Houston came along. For those who don't know, Janice was just 24 years old when Clive Davis signed her to Columbia Records along with her band Big Brother and the Holding Company after their performance at the Monterey Pop Festival. Clive said that she was one of the most electrifying performers he had ever seen, and she was the first major artist he signed after he became president of Columbia Records. So he was determined for her to succeed. After the release of their album Cheap Thrills, he began to push Janice to go solo. She agreed and began her solo career with the Cosmic Blues Band, and that was when their relationship started getting complicated. Janice started to dislike the business side of the music industry and the things she was asked to do. She didn't enjoy touring constantly, the commercial expectations for every song she released, and how she was being managed, polished, and reshaped into a solo star. Most of Janice's old friends and support system were cut off, and while she had used drugs recreationally in the past, she'd become a full-blown addict under her new management. So, it didn't take long before Janice and Clive started to butt heads on a lot of things. She started to make decisions without consulting him and was slipping more and more under the pressure of being a solo singer. And when she was recording her second album, Pearl, Janice was found dead in her motel room. Now, official reports claim that she OD'd from heroin plus the effects of alcohol, which matched up with her addiction. However, industry sources claim that it wasn't the case at all. Janice had started to find her stride with her second album and had written letters to an ex-boyfriend, David Niehaus, about how she wanted to slow down, buy a house with him in California, and have a more steady future. So it didn't make sense that just when she was ready to change her life, she died. But one thing we do know for sure was that with Janice Joplin gone, her catalog went up, and her posthumous album Pearl generated millions, since her masters is still under Columbia Records and Sony. Someone said, "Stars being worth more dead than alive is a fact, and it can be a motive for someone to kill them. Also, if someone has a history of drug use, it's easier to kill them and make it look like an OD." And Alicia Keys noticed that much as Janice Joplin and Whitney were influential in different eras, both of them practically went through the same thing. Clive Davis also claimed to be enamored with Whitney after seeing her perform at a nightclub. He positioned himself as her industry father and was instrumental in how successful her self-titled debut album was. When she signed a new $100 million contract with Clive's Arista Records, it was celebrated as the largest deal in music history, and Whitney was paid an advance of $40 million. This deal was personally orchestrated by Clive, and from the outside looking in, it was a sign of their bond. However, that contract was really the nail in Whitney's coffin. Whitney had to earn back the advance through album sales, tours, and endorsements before she could be paid the rest of the money. And to Whitney, this seemed like something she could easily do.
It's one of those lifetime memories because you don't forget it. I heard about this young, stunning, beautiful singer who was appearing in her mother's act, and it was a club called Sweetwater, and I went down there, and she was singing backup with her brother for her mother, and then she stepped out to do 2 solos, and the hair on your arms and the tingle goes up your spine, and it was an amazing, of course, it's an indelible experience. It's an indelible memory.
She was one of the best-selling artists in the world and had sold over 200 million albums and singles. She was also able to earn up to $30 million a year from touring alone. Now here's where it gets shady. Immediately after signing the contract, Whitney's records stopped selling, and the record label blamed digital piracy as the reason why no one was buying or listening to her music like they used to. On the other hand, Whitney's debts to Arista and Sony kept skyrocketing. Clive also gave Whitney loans to keep her head above water, and what he never told her was those loans actually came from Sony and not from him directly. By the time she died, Whitney owed millions to Sony, which she could have easily paid off the debt if she sold more than 5 million albums posthumously. However, the loans that she got from Clive locked her into the contract with Sony, to the point that a label executive claimed that her estate would never see any royalty checks in our lifetime, or maybe longer. So, when an artist who used to be hugely successful, like Janice and Whitney, becomes a liability for Clive, they become more valuable dead than alive. And it's much easier to pull off once there's already a history of drug issues in the picture. Like Janice, Whitney had told Brandy that she was finally ready to slow down and turn her life around, only for her to be discovered dead in a bathtub at the Beverly Hills Hotel in 2012. Initial reports claim she died from accidental drowning caused by a heart attack and intoxication. However, it later came out that Whitney had multiple marks on her face and body that looked like defense wounds. Forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht also pointed out that the water in Whitney's bathtub was too hot for her to have entered voluntarily, so it's possible that she was already dead before she fell into the bathtub, or was pushed in by someone else. A private investigator, Paul Hubel, also confirmed the rumors surrounding Whitney and said that there was video evidence of 2 men entering Whitney's room that night, and that was consistent with the defensive marks that were found on her body. But it was easier for the hotel to sweep it under the rug and run with the story that Whitney had died from intoxication.
Hubel says he has surveillance video from the Beverly Hilton, where Houston was staying when she died in February, that supports his story. Contrary to the coroner's conclusion that her death was accidental, Hubel claims that Houston's body shows classic defense wounds consistent with someone fighting for her life.
There is also the fact that a few days before she passed, she had crashed an interview with Clive Davis, Monica, and Brandy, and passed a note to Brandy. If you pay close attention, you could hear her tell Clive and Monica that she almost drowned twice.
I'm just saying love it because I can't. I love it. It's my dad. It's my dad. I'll see you later. I'll see you later. Mom, come see her. Come say hi to Come say hi to your godfather. Come say hi to your goddad.
And on top of that, there was Clive's reaction to the news that Whitney had just passed. While half of the room was in tears and the other half just stunned, word is that he showed almost no reaction. All he said was that the night had to go on and called on a few people to give a tribute to Whitney. Clive also ordered that Whitney's body should not be removed until his party was over, because he didn't want anything to disturb the event.
Well, you're a very small minority, because if you knew Whitney better, you knew she was not there to perform.
Yeah.
This was her favorite night of the year. She came out every year. This party was so part of her.
So you're saying
and
that she
so
would've...
that the family, we spoke to representatives of Pat, who was a manager, and Gary, who was her brother.
Her body was still upstairs.
But we dedicated the evening. Whitney would have wanted this party to go on any more than the Grammys should stop.
I thought that was complete insanity. And knowing Whitney, I don't believe that she would have said, the show must go on. She was the kind of woman that would say, stop everything. I'm not going to be there. You know, I don't know what could motivate a person to have a party in a building where the person whose life he had influenced so enormously and whose life had been affected by her. So they were like, I don't understand how that party went.
From the way Clive spoke, it's hard to believe that he's been in Whitney's life since she was a teenager or had a close relationship with her. And that's because Whitney was nothing more than an asset to Clive, that he was more than willing to cash in when he felt like it would be more profitable. Sources also confirm that Clive knew more about Whitney's death than he let on. And it's possible that he even knew what was going to happen that night, which was why he insisted for the party to continue. But the one mistake Clive made was that he never thought people would dig too deep into Whitney's death. He thought that with her past struggle with drugs and the intoxication diagnosis, fans would take it like that and call it a day. But the internet is still digging into it and isn't about to let anyone forget how he stepped on Whitney to make his mark in the industry. Clive Davis made that contract with her knowing her situation. He said that he knew she wasn't going to be able to fulfill that contract. It was all planned. Clive was a greedy thief and still a devil. There is no way Clive would say a prayer for Whitney and go home. Let everything come out and expose the wickedness that continues to go on in Hollyweird. Clive had an eye for talent, but he was an extortionist. I believe he ordered hits on many of our beloved singers, especially when they became more of an asset dead than alive. But what do you guys think about this? Sound off in the comments and make sure to like and subscribe. See you later, baddies!